Hello and welcome to the Total Mental Performance Podcast, the one and only mindset podcast dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs and coaches master their mindset, giving you insider access to industry leaders around their psychology, their campfire stories, and the mindset required to be successful in this business. I'm your host, Kieran O'Neill, mental performance coach and founder of Total Mental Performance, the world's fastest growing specialist mindset service dedicated to the fitness industry. So without further ado, let's lean in and listen. Yes, team. Welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today, I'm especially excited. We have Keegan Hirst. He is the founder of PTIQ, which is one of the world's leading fitness coaching programs that helps gay men build incredible bodies, mindset mastery, and live with authentic purpose. On top of that, he is a professional rugby league player who's just come out of retirement, and he's the first British rugby league player to come out as gay. I met Keegan at Kirk Miller's private coaching event. So me and Keegan are both clients of Kirk. And as I was speaking to Keegan, I just sensed such a lovely energy, a wonderful person. And then on top of that, he just has an incredible story about having to go through various different identity shifts and changes and how the world around him also responded to that and how he was actually able to turn a moment of chaos into one of the best moments ever of his career, which was just super inspiring. Keegan, mate, it's an absolute honor to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for that lovely introduction. You almost made me blush then.
Oh, man. It's what I call the highlight reel. When a boxer is introduced to the ring, they always bring out all of those little highlights. And I'm always like, right, how do I encapsulate that into a nutshell? But there we are. Mate, I would love to share just a little bit about you, what it is that you actually do on a day-to-day. I've given the highlight reel, but what does life actually look like for Keegan?
So on a day-to-day basis at the minute, as you said, we've got our coaching program. We've got about 80 odd clients in there at the minute. We've got a team. We've got Joe, who's our head of performance. We've got a psychotherapist, and we've got a physio in there as well. So the guys have got all the basic needs covered kind of thing. So it's managing that, you know how it is, running a business, keeping on top of everything, content, pushing all that out there. As you mentioned there, I've just come out of retirement. So I'm reconditioning the body to get used to getting beat up again, which it sounds quite sadistic, actually, but it's enjoyable. I've certainly felt being in the wilderness and not having something to train for. That was something that I really struggled with when I wasn't playing. I never realised that I've always loved training, and the reason that I've always loved training is because I've had something that I've been training towards. And when I took that away, I really fell out of love with training. So I've been getting back into that. I'm also a dad. I've got 2 kids. I've got a 14-year-old who's basically like Kevin and Perry incarnate. I've got a 10-year-old. I've got a dog, and I've got a boyfriend. So plenty of people to keep occupied. So yeah, I mean that's my day to day, and then obviously trying to find some time to sit and play on the piano for 5 minutes. That's my little side gig, learning to play the piano. I must stress learning to play.
Well, if we ever get a follow-up episode, mate, maybe you can play the intro.
just give me 6 months to learn it.
Easy peasy. There's so much, and obviously with all of that going on, you know, there's so many different things that are capturing your attention. There's so many different things on a physical level, on an emotional level. There's a lot in there. There's a hell of a lot in there. Yeah. Well, Keegan, let's just run into your story. If you could give us a snapshot of where it all started and how it landed you in the position that you are today, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, I'll give you the cliff notes. So I grew up in the, as you can probably tell by my accent, I grew up in the north of England, West Yorkshire, a little town called Batley. In the 90s, I'm 34 now, and I think I probably knew that I was gay from a young age, probably about 13 or 14, if I think back realistically. But just with where I grew up, the time period, there weren't gay people. I didn't know of gay people. Gay people being gay just wasn't a thing where I grew up. My mum was very old school. She brought us up I've got a younger brother, a younger sister. She brought us up on her own, and she was you grow up, you get a job, you have some kids, and that's your life, and you should be grateful for it. Very northern. And so I did well at school. I was very good academically at school, A's and B's, but I kind of fell into rugby. I was a big fat kid. I was really geeky. My mum, to be fair, we lived on a council estate. My mum didn't want us to play out because she didn't want us getting in bother. Anyway, one guy once randomly pulled up outside the house, said, "Get in the car. You're coming to. I'm taking you with me." I thought, this is the stranger here that my mum keeps going on about. Turns out it was the local coach who was one of the kids' dads, and he'd seen big kid, he'll probably be able to play rugby. Anyway, I went to rugby. I was crap. I couldn't catch, couldn't run, which is all you need to do to play rugby, really. But I loved the crack of it, and it was the first time probably that I ever felt like I was part of something. I know this sounds a bit cliche, but I always kind of felt like I was different to the other kids, and I didn't really know why. And I never really felt like I fitted in, but I did feel like I was fitted in at rugby. And I'm a massive team player. Like, I remember someone was coming in to do they did like a preliminary thing in season, and they asked everybody what their goals were for the season. They had to write them down, whether it was personal accolades, whether it was team accolades, whether it was getting a better contract. And there was only 2 of us in the whole squad who put wanting the team to do well rather than individually. And I was one of those. So I'm a massive team player. So I really, really fell into rugby, and I was crap at it, but puberty was good to me. And then seemingly overnight I could play rugby. I got signed up. I went through the scholarship. I went through the academy. I ended up in a part-time league playing at a decent level. Essentially what championship is in football, but some of it's part-time. In that time, I met a woman, got pregnant. We'd not been together very long, about 6 months when she got pregnant. My dad had never been around, so I was really conscious that I wanted to be a good dad and be around, even though it was not what I planned. So we ended up getting married. We had another kid because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I suppose this is where the rubber meets the road. I just kind of suppressed a big part of me in the sexuality, my wants, needs, desires, to placate everybody else in life. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. We put other people, we deprioritize ourselves, don't we? Put everybody else's needs above our own. I certainly did that, but I always do things to the nth degree. And I became a professional athlete by being stubborn and just hanging in there. And I was stubborn and I hung in there with regards to my mental health as well. I was in a really bad way at one bit. Really struggled with depression, so much so that I was drinking a lot. I was taking a lot of drugs, escapism, whether it was work, whether it was training, anything to not face the guilt and the shame that I had for living a life that I didn't want to live, but also dragging other people into it. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to kind of scoot over it, and this is not me downplaying it, but I've said it many times, and it kind of loses its potency when you just, going on and on about it. But I contemplated suicide. I didn't because of the kid. The kids were. If I hadn't have had kids, I don't think I would have still been here. But I didn't do that. Eventually, that kind of behaviour has a big impact on your relationship, right? And it became untenable. Me and my wife split up. And then with a bit of distance, a bit of perspective, I was then able to, I guess, come to terms with, accept that I was gay and the impact that was having on my mental health and my behaviour. And then from that, I realised that I was it. It suddenly then became, this isn't who I am. I'm behaving in a way because of, these certain circumstances. So I was able to take some semblance of control then, which probably was the first time in my life I felt like I'd been able to do it. I came out, I told my wife, I told my mum, those two didn't go down very well. Told my friends, family, rugby team, they took it really well. And then eventually a few months later, it became public knowledge. It came out in the newspaper. It was front page of the Sunday Mirror, and it became a bit of a sensation. That was 2015. From there, I went to play Super League, which I'd never played before. Played in Super League for a few years, on a good team, played regularly. And then just life got a hell of a lot better. My mental health got better. And then I got into, as most people do, I just did my PT coaching course as a something to do while I was playing rugby. I didn't really have any ideals on being a coach or anything like that. And as I came, there was a couple of things. I'd always struggled with weight. Even though I was a professional athlete, I could look at a donut and put weight on. And it was always something that I felt self-conscious about in the dressing room, because nothing is off limits. But you also appreciate that you're rugby playing, as long as you can do what you need to do on the field. It kind of balanced it out. But then coming out and being gay, there is a hell of a lot of pressure to look a certain way, or there feels like there's a lot of pressure. It's perceived, certainly perceived, but you are kind of bombarded with it. And especially me being some kind of role model, I say that in air quotes, or, having some level of notoriety, I then kind of focused the aesthetic rather than the ornament rather than the instrument became a bit more important. And so I just took a lot more vested interest in it. And I just realized there was loads of crap out there, like loads of misinformation, loads of confusion for the sake of confusion. And then having kind of one leg in that camp and one leg in the camp of being a gay man, I realized that there was a lot of things in gay society are, especially as an adult, geared around sex and around drinking, because I feel it's like some kind of protest to take back some kind of control of things that people have been denied from their youth, or they've been, made to feel the shit. Again, it's kind of protesting against the shame of being, stuck in the closet. And I realized that that's all well and good, but it can be quite destructive rather than constructive. And so I thought, right, I want to build a platform that would have helped me. And that is how PTIQ was born. I wanted to create a community for gay guys that could learn, they could get better, they could progress, they could level up, shift into a better version of themselves, and have a supportive network that wasn't all around drink and sex. Drink and sex are not necessarily bad things, in moderation, right? And I'm not some kind of monk. But I just thought you can look at the stats. The gay men's mental health is always worse than their straight counterparts. Suicide rates among gay men are always higher than among their straight counterparts. And yet gay men are, by and large, overachievers. So that sense of needing to prove themselves and then go party at the weekend I felt was having a really bad effect. And so I thought, well, let's see what I can do. And I don't have all the answers. Listen, I'm still figuring things out myself, but that was why I created PTIQ, and that was a shortened version of how I got there.
Keegan, mate, there's just so much I've got so many questions. There's just so much within all of that, and you've done such a great job of articulating that. So thank you. I want to talk about identity. Because there's clearly been a few identity shifts through that, right? There's been the repressed identity, which is so huge, which is so huge, regardless as to whether you're gay or a certain religion, or whether you don't believe in or anything like that. Like Jim Carrey says it best, in my opinion. He says, depressed isn't depressed, it's deep rest. It's when you get fed up of the character that you're playing in life and your body says no. And I resonated with the depression, the suicidal thoughts, and those moments when my identity had collapsed. And I do believe that there's only so long you can go on for where you deny your identity, you deny those parts of you before your body is going to say no, whether that's a career, whether that's a job, whether that's a relationship, whether that's just you fundamentally as a human being. I do believe the body keeps score, and the body will go, no, mate, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. What would you say the signs for you were? And I feel like it's always like a slow erosion of identity. It's always a slow burning process, and then it kind of seems to speed up. But what would you say, as you reflect, was like the warning signs that perhaps if you could have gone back and warned that younger self, hey, just be aware of these, by the way. If you're feeling like this, it might mean this. What would they be?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's really insidious. It's not one thing. It's like Japanese water torture. It's just drip, 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 and like you said, the waves lapping up against the cliff, slowly eroding it away without you even noticing. And it's that daily grind of unfulfillment and mediocrity and not being challenged. And yeah, I think signs, if I could go back, escapism would be a big one. I think if you are choosing behaviors purely on the basis that they will change your state, whatever they may be, whether it's drugs, whether it's gambling, whether it's sex, whether it's gaming, there are some that are less harmless than others, but it's still escapism. And if you are overwork is a big one that so many people fall into the trap of. I think it's if you can take and it's really difficult when you're in what we'd say in rugby, when you're in the tumble dryer and you're in the thick of it. It's really difficult to get that perspective. But certainly escapism, why are you doing drugs? Why are you drinking so much? Why, if it's to medicate, if it's to anesthetize yourself, whatever it might be, I would say escapism is a big one. I would say isolation. That was a big one for me. I was really good at. I would always go on team nights out, and I would always be the first one there and the last one to leave, because I wanted everybody to think that I was on point, loads of fun. What an amazing guy Keegan is. To alleviate some of the guilt that I felt, but I think. Realistically, I didn't want to spend any time with anyone. I didn't want to have any kind of meaningful conversation. It was all just noise. And so I would take myself out of any situation where I thought that somebody might delve beneath the surface and go, are you really okay? I would extract myself from that kind of scenario. So I think that those two would probably be the big one, like for self-isolation, escapism, and just a general acceptance of mediocrity. Just to go, I'm okay. This is, from the outside, I had a really nice life. I had a wife, I had kids, I had a professional rugby career, I had a house. You can look and go, you've got it. But I think when you just and I don't care what anybody says, you can bullshit yourself as much as you want. Like you can. I've bullshitted myself for big periods of my life, but deep down I knew, and and it's when you just choose not to listen to it. So I think that probably be my three there.
It's so fascinating, the self-medication part. And I've got a lot of gay friends, and something I noticed, and I asked one of my gay friends, my best mate Sam in London, I said, why do you guys drink all the time? Like, when you guys drink, you guys really fucking drink. And he said, well, Kieran,
no one parties harder than the gays. No one parties harder than the gays.
It's true. Some of my worst hangovers ever coming out of Soho the next day thinking, Jesus Christ. I asked him, what's that about? Why is that? He goes, well, when you spend all your life repressing yourself and you have a mechanism that helps you be yourself, would you not want to use that? And that for me just sort of hit me to my core. I was like, wow. Because if you think, like, I always say there's nothing inherently bad or evil. Drugs aren't bad, sex isn't bad, alcohol isn't bad. But like you said, it's the intentions behind using them, using all of those tools. Because I do believe they're tools. I do believe they're there to actually enhance human behavior. I do believe they are to help us reach other levels. But if you're
Yeah.
using them out of pain, guilt, shame to numb out negative emotions, that's a sign where you're really getting stuck. So that really resonates.
Yeah.
Isolation. I call this a bunker mentality. And you see this particularly, and if we think about gaming, many of the ones that I know are very fucking competitive and driven. Not all of them are, but in my environments, just like you're in competitive driven environments, often entrepreneurs, coaches, those types, and athletes, and those types of individuals. So what I tend to find is often that when you're in that space of isolation, usually competitive people don't like raising their hands and asking for help. And that's what I call the bunker mentality. When shit hits the fan, they all go into the bunker. You kind of feel like you can't
Yeah.
talk to anyone. And actually, it's raising
Yeah.
your hand to what I call the boardroom, a team of advisors or even just friends and family, and going, you know what, I'm not okay. I'm finding shit hard. And I think that when you have that repression of identity and then you go inside the bunker and then you're in that darkness, it gets really difficult.
Yeah.
And then the final thing that you said was, you know, and deep down, I think humans always know. They know whether the relationship they're in is right or wrong. They know whether the behaviors that they're doing is right or wrong. But we'll all try and hoodwink ourselves to try and tell us, nah, it's just a drink of the weekend. What's wrong with that? Or, nah,
Yeah.
they're okay, or she's okay, or he's okay, or whatever. And actually, it's a dangerous, powerful combination. And like you said, when you slowly start to fall into that mediocrity, one day you'll wake up.
Yeah.
And this is what I always say to my clients. One day you'll just wake up and think, how the fuck did I get here? How did that happen? And it can be a real shock.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is the scary thing. And I think it takes, as I said, it's really difficult to self-diagnose that. And often we can have really good friends in our lives who can say, you're not all right. Things are not going great. And I'm fine. It's like that Ross Geller on Friends where I'm fine. It's like that scene when he's clearly not. And until you are willing to accept that, say, I'm not fine, it's that old adage of you can't help someone who's not willing to help themselves. And often I think it takes something to happen to snap us out of that malaise or to give us a bit of distance from it. So for me, it was the breakdown of my marriage, and then I moved out of the marital home, and then I was able to say, right, so this is what's been going on. But if you just stay on in this daily grind, so many people just get caught up with doing things for the sake of doing things. The old thing of human doing rather than a human being. It's really difficult to escape that.
And it's almost like using external overachievement to kind of validate yourself. You kind of get to this point where it's like you're, in air quotes, you're there, whether that's the house, the career, the money, the physique, or whatever, and you're not quite happy. Often I get clients reach out to me and our team when they get there and they go, oh, I thought having X amount of clients in my coaching business would make me happy. I thought winning this bodybuilding show would make me happy. I thought this, and now things are fine, but I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel satisfied. And often that's where people start to self-sabotage. But when it's understanding that we're all human, we all have these feelings, we all have these emotions. And there's an African proverb which I love, and it's always stuck with me. I heard it when I was 14 years old, which was, if you conquer the enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. And that's stuck with me forever, because I do believe that if you can deal with those emotions, if you can deal with those limiting beliefs, everything that was holding you back, and have the right people around you to hold that space, I genuinely believe you can achieve so many things you didn't think was possible. But we are a prisoner to our own thoughts.
Yeah. I remember once doing a call with he became a client, but it was a prospective call with a client. And he said to me just before he joined, he said, Keegan, can I ask what is the biggest thing that stops clients getting the result? And I just pointed at it and I just said, you. And it's the same, it's the same for us all, isn't it? There's, our job as coaches is to help our clients get out of their own way. And that's why I think for me, coaching has been a big part of my life. I never had a father figure. Coaches have always been like a substitute father figure for me. But coaches have always done two things. One is help me get out of my own way. I can't do that. I'm not good enough. I won't be able to. So, they can do it, but I can't, that kind of thing. And coaches have an amazing gift of being able to believe in somebody before they believe in themselves. And I've experienced that numerous times. And there's an immense sense of gratitude when you actually do believe in yourself and you go, no, I fucking can do that now. And then you appreciate just how much they've believed in you to shove you, to be that pushy stage mum sometimes and go, no, you do it, go, you can do it, go. And we fight back, don't we? We kick back and we say, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that. Because we don't want to leave our comfort zone. But yeah, I think that's, for me, that's what coaching is in a nutshell. That's why I got into it, because I'd experienced in it and I wanted to, as my friend Anthony said, our job as gay guys, as role models, is to pass the baton on. We don't have our parents to empathize. They can't tell us what it's like to be gay. We have to figure that out from an older generation. So our job is then to pass on the baton. And I think that's our job as coaches. I think it's our job as human beings is to pass on, our experiences and things to people to make their life hopefully easier. Not because sometimes people choose to ignore it, but that's the, I think in a nutshell, that is what coaching is.
Well, we're all stood on the shoulders of giants. I can never pronounce his second name. Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think that's it. There was a talk where he said, "I am not a self-made man." When he first went out to the States, he was training in the gym, and everyone went round to his and donated like pots and pans for his cooking and like knives and forks and plates. And he said he had coaches that spent time with him, that helped him, that advised him. And it was so funny. It was an identity shift that I made, because I also come from a working class background. In my head, I was like, no, I'm a self-made man. I didn't have any family connections. Everything I've built has all come through, my hard work. But when he said that completely punched me between the eyes and made me think, well, we're all stood on the shoulders of giants. And actually, my first ever boxing coach did exactly what you just said there. I kept delaying my first fight, and he said, if you wait until you think you're ready, you'll never be ready. And that was so true. And when you start to realize that we're all stood on the shoulders of giants, particularly as coaches, and every now and then, rarely, you'll find a coach that's never had a coach, and I really struggle to trust them. If they say they're a coach and they've never had a coach, I'm always a bit like, well, you've got to bring that on board. You can't see what you can't see. So I think that understanding that we're all stood on the shoulders of giants, and it is our jobs to pass that back down to our clients, our friends, our families, our communities. Really, that's what just makes the world a much better place, which is cool.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question for you, which I'm really fascinated to learn about, because what I notice is a lot of my work is around emotions, it's around boundary settings, it's about helping people break through limiting beliefs. But what I've noticed is when somebody starts making deep personal change, a lot of people in their environment don't like it. And I think part of the reason people don't like it is if they're positive changes, it's kind of holding up a mirror to the positive changes they aren't making. I think some of it is a feeling of threat and insecurity. Now, not everybody's identity shift and the way they present themselves to the world and what they share is as big as coming out and being gay. On top of that, being the first rugby league player to go out and do that as well, it's monumental. Like, I'm sure you get this a lot, but honestly, that when you told me that just completely blew my mind. I was like, whoa, imagine that level of identity shift. And then you have all of the prejudice or actually support and love from people you didn't even realize around you. So I'd love you to share, if you're comfortable with that, is just when that happened, being in an environment like rugby. And I've coached a lot of rugby players that they tell me some of the war stories. They tell me about how intense those environments and those changing rooms can be. How was your experience of that, both the good and the bad? And then how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I think the big thing to remember about when we make changes and people don't like those changes, I think you're absolutely right. It's us holding a mirror up. It shines a light on them, on what they're not doing. But I think it's also really important to remember that us changing changes their lives by, we are a fixed thing in their life. We behave this way, we react this way. That's something that they can guarantee on. And so if that becomes a variable rather than a constant, then that's affecting their life. They're going to have to change, and they don't want to do that. And I think that's really important to remember, because again, however people behave when you change is all on them. It's all on them. And we often take on other people's action, other people's responses. And for me, like a big one that I had, probably the first time I ever was really to dissociate from somebody else's reaction and take it on board. When I came out, my mum did not take it well. She said, you're a disappointment. I'm embarrassed. I can't believe you've done this, lied, blah, 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 blah. And obviously I was upset. It's my mum. But I remember thinking, I have spent so long pretending to be somebody else for everybody else. And if you've got a problem, it's your problem. And I remember everybody going, but it's your mum, but it's your mum. And I just said, so what? I'm not willing to accommodate. If obviously how she had built me up had changed so drastically that she was fighting tooth and nail to keep me where I was, and I just wasn't willing to do that. So that was probably the first time I really was able to dissociate the two things and go, this is a you issue, not a me issue. I think within the changing room, it's interesting because me coming out I can honestly say nobody behaved any differently to me. So obviously some people congratulated me, some people hugged me, shook my hand, some people didn't say anything, but nobody changed their behavior towards me. I can 100% hand on heart say that. But certain people did change when I started getting a level of notoriety then. When I was being invited to, fancy do's and meeting certain people, and then it was very much a thing of sometimes it was, who do you think you are, and don't get me wrong, the rugby guys were very good at keeping me grounded. I'm not too proud to say I probably could have got a little carried away with myself and thought I was a big deal, but the lads kept me grounded. But it became really apparent that they didn't care about me coming out because it didn't really impact them. It didn't minimize them, and it didn't make them feel any better. So that's absolutely fine. But when there was something there like me getting more attention or having a level of fame that maybe some of the other guys didn't have, then that was when it became a thing. And I would often get, you've changed. The big one. I think when you know you're doing well when somebody says that you've changed. And I was a good friend of mine. He said, if someone ever tells you you've changed, you've got two options as a response. Number one is, yes, I have. And number two is, you haven't. Because it's a them thing. People are allowed to change. And that was a mentality that I was stuck in so long, that this is my identity, this is who I am, this is what people think of me, and I have to stay here. And it's like being alive but being encased in stone or something. Like you want to move, but you can't, and it's self-imposed. And so that kind of shift, and it was amazing how I would go, I don't really care what you think. I don't really care if you think I've got too big for my boots. I don't really care if you don't like that I'm doing this or that. And it was amazing how quickly they shut up. The big thing that, if I could sum it up in one line, it became obvious that the people who weren't very close to me, the people who I knew, acquaintances, everybody wants you to do well, as long as it's not better than them. And that became apparent. Yeah, that became apparent. But for people like outside, not my close friends and your close family should always want you to do better and not be threatened by your success. And for me, I've always thought that if my friends succeed, their success is my success. I benefit from that, whether it's they're able to buy me a drink or we go to nice places on holiday, they have a nicer house that I am able to enjoy that. And so it's when people are threatened by it, that when they're on the outside. And it's that kind of mindset that I want you to do well, but not better than me, because everybody punches up, right? Nobody ever punches down. So yeah, I think for me coming out and going through that was like a crash course in all of that. And I talk to my guys a lot about that, because I do think one of the biggest things that stops people changing and evolving and growing is their friends and their families' lack of ability to be able to allow them to do it.
Without doubt. And there's zero doubt that that was an absolute crash course in how to do that. And I think you're the perfect guy to bring that to other men and say to them, you need to be yourself. Because the body keeps score, and it always knows when you're not being yourself. Deep down, you know when you are and when you're not. And not all of us are ready to show our entireties of ourselves. Even have you've done loads of work, even if you've done loads of therapy and mindset work, even if you've been through the ringer, there's still going to be parts of yourself that you don't want to quite show the world yet. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe that as a coach, for you to genuinely connect with another human being, you need to go to the depths. You need to explore yourself. You need to understand what's driving you and what are the war stories that you've been through, and articulating those stories back to your clients. Because if you have that knowledge, or there's a great phrase, which is you can only take a client as deep as you've gone yourself. So me personally, I've done 150 hours of therapy, mindset coaching and performance coaching as a client. You have to do that. You have to go to those depths. And as a fitness coach, there's so many different areas of that. There's actually your technical training and nutrition knowledge, but something that's so underrated is your personal story, your personal emotions. People often think transformation is just physical. Oh, just lift this up and eat that, but it's not. It's mental. The number one predictor of success between therapists isn't CBT, psychotherapy, counseling, or any of those things. It's the relationship between the client and the therapist was the number one predictor of success. And I think the more that you can be introspective and understand yourself and who you are and what makes you tick and why you tick that way and why you make certain behaviors and decisions, you can just take clients to a completely different league. And I think part of the reason why you get such good results and you have such a great community is because you've been through it, you've understood it, you've reprocessed it, you've relearned it, and you've shared that all with the guys, which is just incredible to see.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, mate. Thank you. I think that vulnerability as a coach is really important. That I think the years of pretending that you're a robot who's got it all figured out and you never fuck up. I think that's really intimidating for people, especially people who've just regular people who've people have had loads of stuff going on, and if you appear perfect in a world of social media where everybody looks perfect, everybody's life looks amazing, to be bombarded with perfection is, I think, probably one of the most terrifying things, to think that you've got to have it all figured out. And I'm the first to admit to my clients, on anywhere, I do not have it all figured out. And I've done a lot, I've been through a lot, I've done lots of therapy, I've had lots of conversations, I've done my body's done things, my mind, gone to places I never thought I'd be capable of going to, but I absolutely do not have it all figured out, and I am not ashamed. I tell my kids on a regular basis, I do not know what I'm doing. I've never been a dad to a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old before. Next year, I've never been a dad to a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old. So it's all a learning curve, and I think, like you said there, Kieran, there is this thing of we've all got stuff to work on. It's there's all these cliches like we're all a work in progress, and it's never finished. And there's lots of different ways to get to where the direction that you want to go in. And I think for me, I can rehash and rejig and give back out my story in various different ways to empathize and help people. But people are all on their own. They'll figure it out themselves. All you're trying to do is just stop them dropping into pitfalls. And again, something I came to realize, I think the biggest shift, because I, again, as an athlete, as a gay guy, coming from a working class background, I always thought that I had to be 100% all the time. And it's something that I still struggle with now massively. I think knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect, just don't let perfect get in the way of being good, I think is really nice succinct way to put it, because it's just better to have a general trajectory of upwards than perfection kills more dreams and more results than anything else, because it's unattainable. Strive for excellence and be happy with good, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what Kirk and Chris are always saying, aren't they? They're saying imperfect implementation. And I think I learned that.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky to be coached by Hazel Gale, who's a former kickboxing world champion, therapist, and mindset and performance coach. It's funny, I didn't want to speak to a woman about my. I ended up with an eating disorder after
I read
boxing
Hazel
and cutting
Gale's
weight for
book.
so long. Oh, really? It's incredible, isn't it? Fight.
Yeah. I read that years ago. Yeah.
If you scroll into the back, she left me a little mention, and I didn't expect that. I really didn't expect. I don't normally read the back pages either, so when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, your heart starts racing because it spelt Kieran as well. And I said, "Hazel, is that me?" She's like, "Of course it was." Lovely, incredible lady. I didn't want to help. I didn't want to reach out to her. I didn't want to reach out to any woman. I was looking for a man. I think I went to an eating disorder NHS group, and I was the only man there out of 22 women, and many of these women were gorgeous, by the way. And with my self-worth being so low, it was just crippling, like being the only man there. But I didn't want to work with a female. I really didn't. I was like, no, I can't do it. It's just and eventually. And I was looking at, I could not find a man for love nor money. They're all fully booked, or if they weren't fully booked, they didn't have the boxing or the business background that I felt like they could really help me. And then I saw Hazel, and I was like, oh, I don't want to work with a woman or whatever. And then I looked, and it said she was a former kickboxing world champion, former British boxing champion. So I thought, well, I want to win a world title, so I'll test her out in my little egoic brokenness. And she just completely changed the game for me. Like, changed my life entirely. I wouldn't be here without her, and she inspired me to do what I do today. As we said earlier, all stood on the shoulders of giants. But she made it really clear to me that you don't have to be perfect to win. And you've competed with some of the top in the sport, right? You build up this image that everybody else is perfect and everybody else is amazing, and they're not holding injuries, or they're not, emotionally have stuff going on. You just assume that they're perfect. I used to do this with all my opponents all the time. I'd put them all on a pedestal. When I had my place on the England team, it was always looking around at everyone else and assuming that everybody else there had all their shit together and they weren't struggling with weight. It was just me. When you start to realize that everybody has shit going on, everybody doesn't feel good enough, everyone doesn't feel worthy. The difference between high performers and medium to low performers is high performers can feel that shit and still go out and do it anyway. And then also they understand that you don't need to be 100% in order to get the result that you need. And when you start to let go of that perfectionism, when you start to realize, okay, I am enough, I was always enough, I'm going to strive for more, but I'm okay with where I'm at. And as long as you do your best, it sounds so cliche, but in my opinion, cliches are cliches for a reason. As long as you do your best and you can go to bed going, I gave my best swing, that was my best swing of the bat, and that's all I've got. To me, that's enough, and that's where we've got to get to,
Yeah, I played professional rugby. I didn't play international. I wasn't good enough to play international. As a kid, I wasn't good enough to play. I never played county. I never represented my country as a kid. I have at no point been a world, a trendsetter, trailblazer, world beater rugby player. I haven't. I'm not under any illusions of that. But what I have played at a higher level than many people who have represented their county, who have represented their country, who have been on paper better players than I have, stronger than I was, faster, fitter, and they'd never made it to where I made it to, and they never played at the level I did for the length of time that I did. And again, it's that thing of, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to work, and play to your strengths. Do double down on what you're not good at. Work on it, but don't let it paralyze you. But I'll be the first to say I'm not going to be remembered for being an amazing rugby player. I'll be remembered as the gay one. But I'm completely fine with that, and I don't have anything to prove to anybody in rugby. I have played in literally every league in this country. I've played over 320 odd games already, and I am not a very good rugby player in the grand scheme. I mean, compared to your leg, yeah, I guess I am, but in the grand scheme of greats, I'm nowhere near. But I'm really happy with what I've done. I'm really happy with, they used to call me the tractor because I was the same speed running on my own. With 5 people were hanging off onto me. So, I've done the best with what I've got, and I'm really proud of that, and I'm really happy. It does not bruise my ego at all to say I am not the best rugby player that's ever been. I'm sure I'm not the best coach either, but I do a decent job with the tools that I've got. So I'm happy with that.
I want to challenge your thinking on not being a trailblazer, because you are a trailblazer. For you to actually come out and be the first gay rugby player in Britain to come out, come on, don't undersell that. That is a fucking trailblazer, And sports is so powerful because sports is something that transcends so many different things. It's almost like a language. How you can you can communicate with someone when you don't even speak the same language. I boxed a guy called Ronald Saruko, world number 4. Absolutely should have, it was the weirdest fight ever. Didn't speak a word of English, from Uganda, boxed for Sweden eventually. But yeah, we connected. And it's so straight. Another guy I boxed from Italy. You can connect, and
yeah.
Often people look at the scoreboard, they look at sort of titles, they look at all of that, but socially, psychologically, mentally, and of course I'm biased because I'm a mental performance coach and what we do at TMP, but if we're talking about elite level performance, being able to be yourself in such an incredibly difficult environment, and even the perception of that environment. So your experience was actually it was fine, but before you didn't know that was going to be the case. To be the person that goes first, that to me is the definition of a trailblazer. So I think it's an incredible story, and mate, it's been an absolute honor for you to share all of that.
No, thank you for having me, mate. I appreciate it.
I've got one final question before we go. I ask every guest. Now, forget about us as an organization, forget about total mental performance, but what does the phrase total mental performance to you? If you had that, how would you know?
If I had it, how would I know? I think. Let me have a quick think on that. How would I know if I had total mental performance? I think it's been. It kind of ties in with what we've just spoken about. I think it's being able to operate at as high level as possible, which might not necessarily always be the highest level, but as high a level as possible given the circumstances, and I think this is an important caveat, and to be able to appreciate that was the case, because it's really easy to look back and something and go, I didn't try as hard as I could have done more. But sometimes you can't try any harder. If you've there's been times where I've played in games where I literally snapped my ankle ligament, and I remember watching the video afterwards and beating myself up, going, I should have made that tackle. I couldn't fucking get there. And I look back now and I go, I did the best that I could. So I think, being able to operate at as high a level as possible and be able to appreciate, the circumstances in and around it. I think context is always as important as the data.
I love that. Thank you so much, Keegan. It's been an absolute wealth for you to come and jump on the pod. Where can people find you? I'm going to put your links in the show notes below.
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it's all Keegan Hirst. That's where you'll find me. I'm prolific.
I love that, mate. Love it. Well, mate, thank you so much for coming on. It means the absolute world. And team, please jump onto our Instagram page. Show us some love in the comments. Feel free to reach out to Keegan. He's an incredible guy. And thank you so much, Keegan. Much appreciated.